June 1st is quickly approaching for the black and gold and the NFL at large. So today on Steelers Talk, I've got 9 wide receivers, because let's face it, if the Steelers make a big trade post-June 1st, it's going to be for a wide receiver. So today, 9 wide receivers that I think the Steelers may be targeting post-June 1st to kind of put the cherry on top of this excellent offseason from GM Omar Khan. Now, before we get into today's list, predict it for me down there in the comments section. Will the Steelers trade for a wide receiver before the season begins? And if you think so, if you think that they do trade for a receiver, which one do you think it's going to be? Predict it for me down there in the comments for today's pinned comment. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds, just the way the YouTube algorithm works. When that happens, take advantage of that time by letting me know which receiver you think the Steelers are going to get. So let's start with Brandon Aiyuk here. And listen, I do think this one's less likely. You know, if you would have told me a couple months ago that they traded for Brandon Aiyuk, I would have probably believed you because the rumors were really swirling. You know, he called out Mike Tomlin on X, all these different things. And, you know, there's still, a sliver of a chance that Brandon Aiyuk gets traded because San Francisco doesn't want to pay a receiver $30 million per season. And according to Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, that is kind of the starting point that Brandon Aiyuk wants on his new contract. Of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown from the Detroit Lions signed a contract that was worth $28 million per season. Brandon Aiyuk wants to make at least $2 million more per season than St. Brown. And because of that, San Francisco might be like, you know what, if we're not going to pay Brandon that $30 million mark, maybe the Steelers will, and we can get a king's ransom for him in exchange. They did draft Ricky Pearsall this year, by the way. They still have, Jennings and Deebo, so it's possible that they trade Brandon Aiyuk, but I would probably say it's unlikely at this point because I don't think the Steelers are going to be willing to give up what the 49ers probably want in exchange. They probably want at least what they got, or what the Eagles got, or what the Titans got, I should say, for A.J. Brown, right? First-round draft pick and a third-round draft pick. That's probably going to be the starting spot for Brandon Aiyuk, and, you know, having to pay a first-round draft pick next year and then another mid-round pick in a future draft, plus you have to pay Brandon Aiyuk $30 million per season. That's a lot that you're giving up for one player, so I'm not sure if the Steelers are going to be willing to pay that much to get Aiyuk in their building. Now discuss it for me down there in the comments. Would you pay Brandon Aiyuk $30 million per season? Let me know what you guys are thinking down there in the comments section. I know some of you just want Aiyuk in the building, don't care how much it takes to get him. And then I know there's some of you out there that think $30 million is way too much for even a second-team all-pro receiver like Aiyuk. So let me know your reasoning down there in the comments section. Another guy on the 49ers that I actually think is more likely here is Deebo Samuel. And this is something that I think a lot of people are sleeping on, but I think Deebo Samuel actually has a pretty decent chance of being a Pittsburgh Steeler for the 2024 season. The reason why I say that is that San Francisco can save a lot more cap room by waiting post-June 1st for a Deebo Samuel trade, which of course, would open up a lot of cap space to get a potential deal for Brandon Aiyuk done. And you look at the money situation, you look at the splits here. If the 49ers traded Deebo pre-June 1st, so if the Steelers would have traded for him, like say during the NFL draft, that means $21.7 million would have gone dead against the San Francisco 49ers cap, and they would have only saved about $7 million. But by waiting till post-June 1st, that pretty much flips on its head. The dead money goes to 6.6, and then they can save $22 million against the cap for this season, which certainly would help things out in terms of a Brandon Aiyuk deal that could keep him in the Bay. Deebo is someone that's aging. He's somebody that wasn't as productive as Aiyuk last year. So if the 49ers feel like, hey, we're going to pay one guy a big contract, maybe they trade Deebo and they pay Brandon Aiyuk. And remember, guys, they took Ricky Pearsall in the first round this year. That they clearly have big plans for the receiver from Florida probably pretty darn soon. So it's not like if they trade Deebo, they're going to have this massive hole in their wide receiver room. They just paid Juwan Jennings. If they get this deal done, they're going to get something done with Brandon Aiyuk, and then you have Ricky Pearsall to come in there and be that third piece in that wide receiver room. So you're not going to lose too much. You get to save a lot of cap space by making this move, and you probably get like a third-round pick in exchange with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then the Steelers get a legit number 2 wide receiver option. That's a fantastic fit in Arthur Smith's offense. So I think this is actually something that could happen and makes a lot of sense for both sides. Another trade target that the Steelers could go after is DK Metcalf. And this one is popular among Steelers fans out there because he's played with Russell Wilson. The Seattle Seahawks are definitely pressed up against the cap as it stands right now. And getting rid of Metcalf would save quite a bit of cap space. Right now, I mean, they're pretty darn close to the cap. According to overthecap.com, they're just over $1 million away from being right up against the cap. So if the Steelers, or the Seahawks, I should say, really want to, create some space, give themselves some breathing room here, it's going to be interesting because it's similar to the Deebo contract. They can save a lot more money by waiting post June 1st to unload DK Metcalf's contract. Before, the dead money would have been $15 million, and the savings would have been just under 10. By waiting post June 1st, that savings number goes to $17 million. So it certainly makes sense. If the Seahawks are going to unload DK's contract, it would be waiting until after June 1st. But honestly, guys, when I look at this situation, I'm not sure how much of a possibility it is. DK Metcalf is probably going to be a cornerstone offensive piece for their future. So even if they feel like they're going to be rebuilding here soon, DK's 26 years old, and he's a super unique physical talent. You're not going to find another DK Metcalf out there in next year's draft. Somebody that size, that can run that fast, somebody that really dominates the boundary the way that this guy does. I think they're going to want to keep him around for a very long time, and I don't think they're going to want to trade DK Metcalf, even if they can save some money against the cap. I think somebody that they might be more willing to let go, even though they would save less money by trading Tyler Lockett. Lockett is on the other side of 30 years old now, guys. And, if they're trying to get younger, if they're trying to really replenish that wide receiver room and they're trying to get cheaper, this is something that could make sense for the Seattle Seahawks if they want to unload a receiver. And plus, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's not like it's that much of a difference between DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, who you could argue had even better chemistry with Russell Wilson when he was there with the Seahawks than DK Metcalf had. Lockett was the guy for Russell Wilson, particularly in scramble drill. These guys had just unbelievable chemistry when these two were paired up there in Seattle. And, you don't save as much from Seattle's perspective here. The savings, you actually save less by trading him after June 1st than before, which is kind of crazy. But I look at Lockett's situation here. $5 million is more than enough to kind of create some breathing room if you're the Seattle Seahawks. And if you're looking to unload a receiver, I would say you'd probably want to get rid of the 31-year-old as opposed to the 26-year-old with a unique physical skill set. So at the end of the day, I don't think Seattle wants to trade a receiver. I don't think that they're going to be dealing. They have Geno Smith. They have a new head coach that probably wants to win relatively right away. He probably, with Geno and with the receiving core that they have and the defensive pieces that they have, they probably want to compete as soon as possible. Keeping these guys in-house instead of trading them is probably the best way to get that job done. But between the Seattle Seahawks receivers here, which one would you rather trade for? Would you rather probably trade more of a premium, like maybe a first-round pick for DK Metcalf, type DK, or if you'd rather trade like maybe a mid-round pick for Tyler Lockett, who's a little bit older, type TL? Down there in the comments section. And before we get into the rest of today's show, I want to give a big shout out to our sponsor here at Fanatics. Go to chatsports.com/Russ to get a brand new, officially licensed Russell Wilson Steelers jersey in your closet today. They make great stuff there in terms of their jerseys. It's a little bit pricey, but the quality is really, really good, guys. And you get to support the channel because if you make a purchase when you use our link, chatsports.com/Russ, I'll put that link in the comments and description of today's show. If you use that link and then you make a purchase, here at Steelers Talk, we get a portion of the proceeds. So if you want to support the channel and you want to get a brand new Russell Wilson jersey in your closet today, go to chatsports.com/Russ and get it now. Okay, now, another player that I have really been keeping my eye on here is Courtland Sutton from the Denver Broncos, because this makes a lot of sense. And I would say out of all the receivers that the Steelers could be targeting, I think this one might be the most likely. Now, the reports out there is that Denver already shot this down. They said, no, Steelers, we're not trading him to you. But maybe they said, no, Steelers, we're not trading him to you pre-June 1st, because you look at the savings here and the savings difference pre-June 1st versus post-June 1st. It goes from 9.7 to 13.5, and for a team in cap straits like the Denver Broncos, because of the Russell Wilson situation, every dollar counts in these types of situations. They've already traded Jerry Jeudy. They're rebuilding with Bo Nix is what they're hoping is the franchise quarterback there in Denver. And Courtland Sutton isn't a true number one. He's more of a number two type receiver that plays the X position. And I think that's exactly what the Steelers need right now, which is why he's one of my top targets. I think it makes sense for Denver to unload him. I think it makes sense for the Steelers to go out and get him. They need a number two receiver. Courtland Sutton is a legit number two receiver who is a red zone threat. Caught 10 touchdown passes from Russell Wilson last year, so you know they have that established chemistry. I don't think it would cost too much. I think probably a couple pick swaps here and there would probably get the job done, and I think Courtland Sutton would be an excellent fit in Arthur Smith's offense. And then the kind of the four final guys on this list here I think are probably not as good of options. Darius Slayton from the New York Giants has been thrown out there, but honestly, guys, I think it's pretty unlikely. Slayton has been pretty optimistic about the negotiations that his representation and the Giants organization have been having, and I would assume that Slayton is going to be back with the Giants next year, so probably unlikely on that one. And then the final three here, guys, I'm not too keen on Treylon Burks from Tennessee, honestly. He's been a bust to this point in his career. He's dealt with injuries already. And he's just not the best overall athlete in terms of, changing directions. He's not the best route runner. He doesn't get open against man coverage, And even though he's got size, he's got the ability to break tackles, he can make contested catches. There's too many concerns here where I don't even want to give up like a 6th round pick to be able to go get him. I think he might be Pittsburgh's emergency option because he is a scheme fit here. He's a bigger receiver that's a good run blocker, and he seems like the type of guy that Arthur Smith would kind of like. So I personally would not want to make this move if I were the Steelers, but it's certainly one that could happen eventually. And then kind of the final two here, guys on the Texans. We know that they got Stephon Diggs. So they have a couple of, guys that have been moving down the totem pole there in Houston. Robert Woods is one of them, and then John Mechie is another one. Both of these guys, decent run blockers, would be decent fits in Arthur Smith's system. But honestly, guys, those last three on the list, Burks, Woods, and Mechie, I would honestly just rather go in free agency and get Michael Thomas. I mean, Michael is somebody that, when healthy, is still a really productive player in the National Football League with really strong hands. He'd be a legit red zone threat, and you can just sign him to a 1-year deal, and then next offseason, Roman Wilson just, assumes the number two receiver role. Instead of having Roman be your legit number two option heading into his rookie season where there's a lot of pressure, if you get a guy like Michael Thomas, I think that would allow Roman to kind of sit back in a number three role to start. And then, by season's end, Roman hopefully is ready to take on that true number two role, and Michael Thomas can hit the free agency market next offseason. But personally, guys, I would rather trade for a Courtland Sutton, a Deebo Samuel. If you can get a deal for one of those guys done, absolutely go get that done. If you can't, go out and get Michael Thomas. That's the way I'm approaching it right now. So now let's get to the real one roll call here, because listen, guys, I've been rambling here on the show for a while here. If you made it to the end of today's program, I really do appreciate all of your support. So I want to see everybody that made it to the end type real one in all caps down there in the comments section to identify yourselves. Really do appreciate all of your guys' support by sticking to the end. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you click that subscribe button if you made it to the end and you enjoyed what you heard today. We got another Steelers video coming out tomorrow, so don't worry, guys. I'm going to be right here giving you the latest Steelers news and rumors coverage right here on YouTube.